Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, we've had a lot of really good data and information come out this week, starting off with PBH's 2020 State of the Plate. And it's kind of a bummer in a way, but there's a lot of really good findings out of that.
Yeah, they do the survey every 5 years, and so they can track trends, and they have it pretty solid going back 15 years. And the 15-year drop in eating occasions, they do it by eating occasions, how often people are eating fruit or vegetable per day or per meal. And both in the last 15 years and in the last 5 years, although not as dramatic in the last five, eating occasions are dropping for vegetables pretty significantly, and eating occasions for fruit are slightly rising. And I did a couple videos this week with Wendy Reinhardt Capsack, who is CEO of PBH, and you should see those to get a little more in depth on what's inside the data. The bad news is eating occasions are down. There's no question. She called it a consumption crisis, and I agree with her. It is, but she pointed out that all the data from this year's survey is pre-pandemic. You and I both were on webinars this week, one from United, one from PMA, that talked about how sales are going. And the United data shows that, as we've seen in previous numbers, that retail sales are up dramatically, both fruits and veg, year over year. As you would not be surprised, oranges are the biggest riser according to this data. And one of the things I asked during the Q&A segment was, in light of the PBH study that came out this week, did the guy from Nielsen, and Jeff Cady was on there, what did he think, what did they think about whether or not the consumption trend was going to turn around during the pandemic? And they were mostly optimistic, but I don't think the data necessarily shows that yet. And Jeff Cady said, in his personal experience, he's found that people who are already strong consumers of produce are eating more produce. So that's good. That would get eating occasions up. As far as reaching people who weren't eating very much produce before, I'm not sure the data shows that, and my personal opinion is probably not. So what did you find in the PMA research?
Well, the PMA research was tracking on the reports that Anna Marie is putting together monthly, and at the beginning of the pandemic, it was weekly sales reports from IRI data. And for year over year in 2020, we're tracking about 11% over the produce sales from the year before. One of the key things that they said in that report today, and if you can catch the replay of the webinar, it was fantastic. It was one of the best ones I've seen in a while, is that produce sold on merchandising, which means on promotion, was actually significantly down year over year. And that doesn't surprise me at all with the way that consumers are shopping right now. If we're cooking at home, we're typically making lists, sticking to lists, and promotions really don't mean that much. I mean, I'm not getting the sale flyer out and deciding what we're going to eat this week based on what's on sale right now. I'm just going, hey, I saw this awesome TikTok pasta recipe. I'm going to go buy some pasta and some feta and some tomatoes. Still haven't made it, by the way. The people are less sensitive to promotions and less impulsive when we're looking at buying on ad and on promotion. And so that it just kind of reinforced that. And there's really good commentary from both Coburn's and Albertsons to go along with the sales data. But every time we look at this retail sales data, it's all great news for retail. But in the overall scheme of things, we can't ignore that an 11% year over year increase in fresh produce purchase at retail doesn't even come close to making up for all of the losses in food service. And that includes consumption losses. When we're talking about vegetables, Wendy said something really great in one of your videos that you guys had this week, in that people are often, we see fruit consumption going up because fruit is easy. Fruit is, grab a bunch of grapes and wash them off and eat them. Peel an orange, an easy peeler even then, and just eat it. Super easy. You don't have to refrigerate. You don't have to cook. You don't have to prep. You don't have to peel. And, vegetables don't have that ease of entry. And so when
That's
we
true.
take, yeah, when we take,
And we saw that the data shows that from in the last 5 years in vegetables, eating occasions are actually up 10 per year, which means that people were getting it in food service, and it was down at home 24 per year. So a huge number, which led to the overall vegetable category being down. So the question is, in the last year, are most people eating fewer vegetables in restaurants? The answer, of course, has to be an overwhelming yes. So, because no one's going to restaurants. Now they're starting to again now, but for the vast majority of the last year, people were eating considerably less. And like she pointed out, convenience is a huge factor. And you eat vegetables in restaurants because most restaurants do a better job of preparing it. And even if they don't do a better job, they're doing it. You're not doing it. You're not preparing it. You're not cutting it. You're not cooking it. They do a great job in restaurants, and it's a huge way for people to get their vegetables. Are they doing it at home? Um, the the data in the last 5 years said they're doing a lot less of it. And so, what do we think has been going on? Vegetable sales at retail have been up, but the biggest individual vegetables that have dropped in the past 5 years, like lettuce and onions and tomatoes, are the ones that often are put on burgers and sandwiches. Have people started eating less burgers and sandwiches? No, they're
no.
just not taking the time to put that stuff on there as much.
Actually, okay, so am I super mom? Because we had sandwiches last night for dinner, and our sandwiches are the awesome bolillos from HEB. And we have avocado, onions, lettuce, cucumbers, and tomatoes on our sandwiches. And I don't think most people are going to go to the trouble of doing that. They're just going to, roast beef and mayonnaise and mustard and maybe some cheese.
I
So
think you and I are the people who Jeff Katie's talking about, who are already high consumers eating more. Because yeah, I felt I had tomatoes on the counter, and this week I've been like, damn, those should be on my sandwich and burgers and burritos.
oh, I mean,
So it has been.
the last 2 weeks in my household has been just an amazing journey of trying to eat everything we have, and also appreciating that I hoard food, and I'm the kind of lady who has leeks in the crisper drawer without a plan. So I can't say that most people have that going on in their household. I didn't even run out of avocados. I had 2 bags of avocados when our food shortages started. And as we are digging out of this winter storm, I even went to the store yesterday, and just to see what's going on. I didn't even need food yet, which I'm kind of smug about a little bit. There were widespread shortages in a lot of expected areas like water. A lot of people still don't have water because either their pipes are frozen or the city water's not back on in their house. Fortunately, we never lost water in ours. But if you walk around the produce department, there were some noticeable lack of mushrooms. There were no mushrooms. There were no tomatoes. Tropicals was almost wiped out. And this is full on a week after the roads were pretty passable, pretty clear. So I guess I think we're going to have at least another week of trying to dig out of this. And then even, I mean, this is a point of how bad it is here, is that all of the prickly pear cactus that was in the landscaping at HEB is dead. I mean, all of the rosemary that had been growing outside is dead. It was that bad. It was not just us being wimpy Texans not being able to handle the cold. We were completely unprepared for this, and we have never seen anything like this before.
No, I know the freeze is serious, and you can make fun of Floridians getting their jackets off when it drops below 60, but when it's below freezing for a long time, there are serious consequences, not just to consumers, but to the Texas produce industry, such as citrus. Hasn't it been crushed?
Yeah, as far as what I've seen, the most recent estimate is 300 million in losses for Texas citrus. And I did talk to a couple of grower shippers, and worst case scenario kind of did come true. We'll see if any of the bloom will come back after there was a significant amount of bloom on trees, which not only affects this year when we had a lot of the grapefruit that was left on the tree froze. Some of that can be used for juice, but of course that's not the return on investment they need. They need fresh market. And then bloom is next year, so that will be definitely reduced volume for next year. And then just the health of the trees. Hopefully it didn't affect the trees too badly. We don't yet have a report on other vegetables like the hardier stuff like onions and cabbage, but for citrus it does look like pretty bad news.
Yeah, I feel horrible for them. That's you can't make that up.
It's already hard enough to be a farmer, and then to have something like this, you know, once in a lifetime, hopefully, event can come through and just wipe it out like this is pretty devastating for the industry. So as we all work to get everything back up to normal, we have to remember that not only the farmers, but also all of the crews that are out there for picking, the whole, you know, economy in the Rio Grande Valley is going to be affected by this. Definitely not in the short term. It'll be a long-term deal.
All right, well, let's transition to the feel-good story of the week. And that is a news release that came out from the World Wildlife Fund. Their analysis shows that if they partner with the U.S. Postal System, then they can deliver tons of crops from farms that wouldn't be delivered otherwise. What are your thoughts on this potential food waste solution?
So in my neighborhood, when I walk the dog in the morning, I often see the imperfect produce van dropping off imperfect produce at my neighbor's house. And it seems like a pretty good solution. And there's, you know, it's like a hive of bees to see all of the Amazon trucks and the FedEx and UPS just going through the neighborhood constantly. I live in an urban area. It's possible to have that kind of e-commerce and, you know, frequency of deliveries in this population density. What I'm thinking the World Wildlife Fund's analysis is trying to go more toward the rural access, and it is undeniable that the post office often delivers to rural addresses more accessibly and more cost effectively than a mainstream service like you don't see in, I'm going to pick a town out of the middle of nowhere, Great Bend, Kansas. You don't see a hive of Amazon trucks coming in and out of there. My dad happens to be from Great Bend, Kansas. But that kind of area just doesn't have the density to you know, make it cost effective to have all of those trucks out there. So would the Postal Service, which theoretically delivers things in 2 to 3 days, be able to reach that huge population? In theory, it's great. But did you buy anything online for Christmas, Greg? Did it show up?
I noticed that the UPSs and Amazons and FedExes of the world tend to be a little more reliable. So when I first saw this story, I thought, some white collar, coastal based environmentalists solving the problem by using the government U.S. Postal Service. It seems like there might be a disconnect with a little reality in the actual business world, and but I could be wrong.
I think what needs to be remembered is that it could be a best case scenario. I mean, the infrastructure is there, the facilities are there, the routes are there. It would just have to be a significant ramp up of utilization and efficiency to make it feasible. But it is a great idea, because when we think about, oh, you can just buy it online and order your produce online. If your UPS truck doesn't already come 3 or 4 times a day to your neighborhood, it's not going to be feasible to get to a rural area. I mean, it just leaves rural people out in the cold. on this kind of stuff. So I like to see that people are trying to work with studies to do efficacy of trying to reach a broader audience rather than just focusing on urban people. But it would definitely be a significant ramp up of infrastructure and facilities and utilization to be able to do it. So in theory, it's a great idea, but in practice, man, I ordered stuff that in November that didn't show up until mid-January.
I wonder how perishables would do during that. That's a pretty long cold chain there.
I hope nobody sent fudge to friends for Christmas and then didn't have it show up and stuff. You know, have you ever baked cookies for somebody and sent them to them for Christmas and then had it not show up for 6 weeks? Yum.
I haven't, but I've heard that scenario.
Speaking of cookies, I saw you and Wendy had a great wouldn't even get into the debate on do raisins belong in cookies, because raisin consumption apparently is up. During the
Well,
pandemic.
no, we don't know that. Raisins were the #1 fruit loss eating occasion over the past 5 years.
Ah.
But the idea was, and Wendy pointed this out, during the pandemic, raisins have seen a big rise, both in convenience and packaging, because people have been a little more paranoid and more interested in packaged foods. So she thinks that there's a rise in it. And then we started to talk about whether or not people like it in stuff. My family has always been one of those that's not big on the raisin scale. They've got an oatmeal raisin cookie, and then pretty much that's the extent. Anything else
Man, I
is
love
not,
raisins.
it's all fruitcake from that point on.
Oh no. See, I put raisins in curry, man. I love raisins, but I don't just
Put it in
eat
your guacamole?
No. Oh. I felt a little something here for a second there. What?
I'm sure there's a New York Times recipe with it in there.
You could do a edamame raisin guacamole.
Yeah, exactly. Or just use some cream, some canned peas. No one will notice the difference.
I can hear Brian shouting from downstairs. Well, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. Raisins and guacamole. No.